Okay, so picture this. It is December 5th, 2025. You are at the Kennedy Center for the Performing Arts in Washington 600 for the FIFA World Cup draw ceremony. Teams are about to be assigned their groups for the 2026 tournament that the United States, Canada, and Mexico are co-hosting. Standard sports event, right? Except then something absolutely bizarre happens. FIFA President Gianni Infantino walks on stage and announces he is presenting the inaugural, the very first ever FIFA Peace Prize. And who is the recipient? Donald Trump. The President of the United States gets a gold medal placed around his neck, receives a gold trophy with hands holding up the world, and a certificate recognizing his exceptional and extraordinary actions to promote peace and unity around the world. Now, if your first reaction was, wait, FIFA has a peace prize, when did that start? You are asking exactly the right question, because the answer is they just invented it. Literally just created this award. FIFA announced it existed only a month before this ceremony. It is not like the Nobel Peace Prize that has been around since 1901. It is not like the Gandhi Peace Prize or the Seoul Peace Prize with decades of history. This is brand new, created specifically, and let's be honest here, pretty obviously for Trump, and here is where it gets fascinating from a systems perspective. Trump has been openly campaigning for the Nobel Peace Prize for months. He has cited his role in Gaza ceasefire negotiations, claimed credit for mediating between India and Pakistan during their May conflict, talked about ending wars in the Democratic Republic of Congo. He has made it abundantly clear he wants that recognition. But the Nobel Committee didn't nominate him this year. The 2025 Nobel Peace Prize went to Venezuelan opposition leader Maria Corina Machado, who actually did dedicate part of her prize to Trump for supporting her cause. But that is not the same as winning it yourself. So Trump didn't get the Nobel, and then suddenly, conveniently, FIFA creates a peace prize and hands it to him at a World Cup draw ceremony. Now you might think, okay, that is just political theater. Sports organizations do ceremonial stuff all the time. But here is what makes this different, and why I think it is worth analyzing carefully. This isn't just about Trump getting an award. This is about the intersection of sports, politics, power, and legitimacy. It is about what happens when major international organizations start creating awards that look like prestigious honors, but are actually something else entirely. It is about credibility, about signaling, about the difference between earning recognition and manufacturing it. And it reveals something important about how modern power structures work, how legitimacy gets constructed or undermined, and why people increasingly can't tell the difference between genuine achievement and performance art. So today I want to break down what actually happened here, examine the relationship between Trump and Infantino, look at Trump's actual peace claims and whether they hold up to scrutiny, explore why FIFA would do this, and ultimately ask what it means when sports organizations start acting like geopolitical actors awarding prizes for things that have nothing to do with their core mission. Because this story is weirder and more revealing than it first appears. And understanding it tells you something important about how credibility and legitimacy work in the modern world. Let's start with the key relationship here, because none of this makes sense without understanding how close Trump and Gianni Infantino actually are. Infantino has been FIFA president since 2016, and he has cultivated a very public alliance with Trump. The day before this award ceremony, Infantino was at the newly renamed Donald J. Trump Institute of Peace, watching leaders from the Democratic Republic of Congo and Rwanda sign a peace deal. He has repeatedly said publicly that Trump deserves the Nobel Peace Prize, specifically for his work on the Gaza ceasefire. After that ceasefire was announced, Infantino posted on Instagram congratulating Trump, Qatar, Egypt, Turkey, and saying, quote, "President Donald J. Trump definitely deserves the Nobel Peace Prize for his decisive actions." End quote. So this isn't a neutral sports administrator trying to stay out of politics. This is someone who is actively cheerleading for Trump to receive international recognition, and that matters because it contextualizes what this FIFA Peace Prize actually is. It is not an independent honor from a neutral body. It is a prize created by an organization, led by someone who is openly allied with the recipient. Now, why would Infantino do this? Why would FIFA, which is supposed to be focused on organizing football tournaments and developing the sport globally, suddenly start handing out peace prizes? There are a few possible explanations, and I think they're all operating simultaneously. First, the 2026 World Cup is being hosted by the United States, Canada, and Mexico, with a huge portion of games in the US. FIFA needs cooperation from the Trump administration for security, logistics, visas, all the infrastructure that makes a World Cup work. Giving Trump a peace prize at the draw ceremony is excellent relationship management. It flatters the host nation's leader, creates goodwill, and ensures cooperation. Second, FIFA has had serious credibility problems for years. Massive corruption scandals, arrests of top officials. The whole Sepp Blatter era tainted the organization. Infantino has been trying to rehabilitate FIFA's image. Creating a peace prize makes FIFA look like it cares about more than just football and money. It positions the organization as a force for global unity and humanitarian values. Whether that is genuine or just branding is an open question, but the optics are useful. Third, and this is more cynical, but probably accurate, Trump and Infantino have a transactional relationship. Trump gets a peace prize he can point to as recognition of his foreign policy achievements. Infantino gets access, influence, and favorable treatment from the US government for FIFA's interests. It is mutual back-scratching elevated to the international stage. But here is what is interesting about this from a systems design perspective. When you create an award specifically for someone, especially when that creation is so transparent and rushed, you don't actually confer legitimacy on the recipient. You undermine the legitimacy of the award itself. The Nobel Peace Prize has credibility because it has been around for over a century, because it has a defined process, because it has been given to people who genuinely advanced peace, even when it was controversial. Gandhi never won it, which is actually a mark in favor of the prize's independence. They're willing to make mistakes rather than just give it to obvious choices. But a prize that is invented last month and immediately given to the person who wanted it most, that is not an honor. That is a participation trophy. And I think most people watching this ceremony understood that at some level, even if they didn't articulate it explicitly. Okay? So let's actually examine the substance here. What are Trump's peace claims, and do they hold up to scrutiny? Because if FIFA is giving him a peace prize, presumably there should be some actual peace achievements to point to. Trump mentioned several in his acceptance speech. He cited the Gaza ceasefire between Israel and Palestine. He talked about mediating between India and Pakistan during their May conflict. He claimed to have prevented over 10 million additional deaths in the Democratic Republic of Congo. He said he ended wars or stopped them right before they started in multiple countries. So let's go through these one by one and see what is real, what is exaggerated, and what is completely fabricated. Starting with Gaza, there was indeed a ceasefire announced, and the Trump administration was involved in negotiations along with Qatar, Egypt, and Turkey. That is real. Whether Trump personally deserves the primary credit is much more debatable. Ceasefire negotiations involve dozens of parties, years of groundwork, regional actors with their own interests. Saying Trump brokered it single-handedly is like saying the quarterback won the Super Bowl without mentioning the offensive line, the receivers, the defense, the coaching staff. He was part of the process, sure, but the decisive factor, that is a much stronger claim than the evidence supports. And notably, the ceasefire has been fragile, with multiple violations and questions about whether it will hold long-term. Declaring victory when the situation is still actively unstable is premature at best. Now let's talk about India and Pakistan, because this one is really interesting. Trump claims he mediated a ceasefire between the two countries in May 2025, after India launched Operation Sindoor in retaliation for the Pahalgam terror attack that killed 26 people. Pakistan has publicly credited Trump for helping broker the ceasefire. But here is the problem. India has consistently and repeatedly denied any third-party involvement. The Indian government has explicitly stated that the ceasefire was not the result of American mediation. So you have one side saying Trump helped, and the other side saying, no, he didn't. That is not successful mediation. That is two parties disagreeing about what happened. And the more powerful of the two, India, rejecting the entire narrative. If you mediate a peace deal and one of the parties says you didn't mediate anything, that is not a peace achievement. That is a disputed claim that tells us more about Trump's desire for credit than about his actual role. And it is worth noting that the India-Pakistan situation remains tense. Cross-border terrorism continues, and calling this a solved conflict is wildly optimistic. Then there is the Democratic Republic of Congo claim, which is frankly bizarre. Trump said over 10 million people were killed in the DRC, and it was heading for another 10 million very quickly until his administration intervened. First, those numbers are drastically inflated. The conflict in eastern DRC is horrific and has caused enormous suffering, but 10 million killed is not accurate for recent years. Second, the conflict hasn't ended. The day before the FIFA ceremony, leaders from Congo and Rwanda signed a deal at the Trump Institute of Peace, which sounds impressive until you realize that similar deals have been signed repeatedly over the past 2 decades, and none of them have produced lasting peace. The violence in eastern DRC continues. Militias are still operating. Civilians are still being killed. Declaring victory is absurd. And finally, Trump's claim about ending wars right before they started is so vague, it is impossible to evaluate. What wars, where, when? How do you prove you stopped something that didn't happen? It is an unfalsifiable claim. I prevented a dragon attack on Washington yesterday. Prove me wrong. That is not peace achievement. That is rhetorical sleight of hand. So if Trump's peace claims don't really hold up to scrutiny, and the FIFA Peace Prize was clearly created specifically for him by an allied FIFA president, what is this really about? I think it is about something much more interesting than just Trump getting an award he wanted. It is about how legitimacy gets manufactured in the modern world, and what happens when the line between genuine achievement and performance art becomes completely blurred. Think about what legitimacy actually is from a systems perspective. Legitimacy is collective belief. It is the shared agreement that something or someone deserves authority, recognition, or status. The Nobel Peace Prize has legitimacy because enough people agree it is a meaningful honor with rigorous selection criteria. Olympic gold medals have legitimacy because we all accept that winning required genuine athletic achievement. But legitimacy can also be manufactured, or at least attempted. You can create the appearance of authority without the substance. You can generate awards and titles and recognition that look impressive, but lack the underlying credibility that makes them meaningful. And that is what I think we're seeing here with the FIFA Peace Prize. Now here's where it gets complicated. Does manufacturing legitimacy actually create legitimacy, or does it undermine it? If enough people treat the FIFA Peace Prize as real and meaningful, does it become real and meaningful through consensus? Or does the transparently political nature of its creation ensure it will always be seen as a joke? I lean toward the latter, but I am not entirely sure. We live in an era where the difference between real and fake, between earned and manufactured, has become increasingly difficult for people to parse. Social media followers can be bought. News can be fabricated. Credentials can be inflated. Awards can be invented. And if you have enough money, enough power, enough media presence, you can sometimes make people believe the manufactured version is real. That is what makes this FIFA situation so interesting. It is a live experiment in whether you can just create an award out of thin air, give it to yourself essentially through a proxy, and have it be taken seriously. And the early results suggest no, you can't. The reaction from football fans has been overwhelmingly negative. People are calling it politically motivated, saying sports shouldn't be involved in politics, arguing that the award cheapens FIFA and makes the organization look like a Trump campaign operation. Even people who support Trump on policy seem uncomfortable with this particular move, because it is so obviously contrived. But here is what worries me about this trend. Even if this specific award fails to achieve legitimacy, the attempt itself normalizes the practice. FIFA has now established that it gives out peace prizes. Next year, they could give one to someone with more credible peace credentials. And because the award exists and has been given before, it starts to accumulate legitimacy. Or maybe FIFA keeps giving it to controversial political figures, and the award becomes a recognized prize that major leaders compete for, even though everyone knows it is political theater. We already have precedents for this. The Nobel Peace Prize itself has been given to controversial recipients like Henry Kissinger and Barack Obama, and people still treat it as meaningful despite disagreements about specific choices. So maybe the FIFA Peace Prize follows a similar trajectory. It starts as obvious nonsense, but over time, through repetition and institutional backing, it becomes a real thing with real status. And that tells you something important about how power actually works in the world. Legitimacy isn't inherent, it is constructed. And if you have the resources and influence to construct it, you can sometimes make people believe things that initially seem absurd. So what does all of this actually tell us? What is the takeaway from Trump getting a FIFA Peace Prize that was invented specifically for him, based on peace claims that don't really hold up to scrutiny? I think it reveals three important things about how the world works right now. First, the gap between perception and reality has never been wider or more deliberately exploited. Trump understands that for a huge portion of the population, the appearance of achievement matters more than actual achievement. If you get an award, that means you achieved something worthy of an award, regardless of whether the award itself has any credibility. The certificate, the gold medal, the trophy, they all create visual proof that can be photographed, shared on social media, referenced in speeches. The fact that FIFA invented the prize last month doesn't matter to people who see the images and assume it is legitimate. And Trump is exceptionally good at generating these perception wins. He gets the photo up, the headline, the talking point. Whether it is real becomes almost irrelevant, because the image is what people remember. That is not a new phenomenon, but it is accelerating. We live in an age where vibes matter more than facts for an increasingly large segment of the population. And leaders who understand that have enormous advantages over leaders who think substance will speak for itself. Second, this shows how institutions can be captured or co-opted to serve individual interests rather than their stated missions. FIFA is supposed to be focused on football, on sport, on fair competition, and global athletic development. But here it is giving out peace prizes at a World Cup draw ceremony to the president of a host nation who happens to be personally close to FIFA's president. That is not serving football. That is serving Gianni Infantino's relationship with Donald Trump. And it is emblematic of a broader problem we see across institutions. They get pulled into political orbits. They start serving the interests of powerful individuals rather than their core missions. And once that happens, their credibility and independence erode. FIFA was already dealing with corruption scandals and legitimacy problems. Creating a peace prize for Trump doesn't solve those problems. It makes them worse, because it confirms the suspicion that FIFA's leadership is willing to compromise the organization's integrity for political advantage. And third, this reveals the hunger for recognition and validation that drives so much behavior at the highest levels of power. Trump is the President of the United States. He has enormous authority and influence, but that is not enough. He also wants the Nobel Peace Prize. He wants to be recognized not just as powerful but as good, as someone who made the world better, as someone history will remember, as a peacemaker. And when he can't get that recognition from the institutions that traditionally confer it, he finds other ways to manufacture it. That tells you something profound about human psychology at any level of achievement. The need for validation doesn't disappear. It often intensifies because the stakes get higher and the audience gets bigger. So where does this leave us? With a president wearing a gold medal from FIFA at a World Cup draw ceremony, claiming peace achievements that are contested or exaggerated, receiving an award that was transparently created to give him what he wanted. Is it meaningful? Not really. Is it effective anyway? Maybe, depending on your audience. Does it matter in the long run? Probably not. The Nobel Committee didn't nominate him, and FIFA creating a consolation prize doesn't change that. But it does tell us something about the state of legitimacy, credibility, and recognition in the modern world. The lines are blurry, the standards are inconsistent, and, if you have enough power and the right relationships, you can sometimes create the appearance of achievement even when the substance is lacking. That should trouble anyone who cares about truth, about earned recognition, about institutions maintaining their integrity. Because once we fully accept that legitimacy can just be manufactured by powerful people for other powerful people, we've lost something important about how we evaluate achievement and confer status. And getting that back, rebuilding standards and credibility and meaningful recognition, that is much harder than tearing it down in the first place. So stay skeptical. Ask questions. Don't let photos and ceremonies and gold medals convince you that something meaningful happened just because it looked impressive. Because sometimes an award is just an award, and sometimes it is a transaction disguised as honor. Knowing the difference matters more than ever.